What's going on, guys, and welcome to another Doctor Who review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 15th Doctor Ncuti Gatwa story, Empire of Death. It is the final episode of Season 1 slash Series 14. Final episode, second part to the two-part finale. And yeah, we'll get into what I think about this one, but just as a quick teaser, I am quite disappointed. I am quite disappointed after The Legends of Ruby Sunday. I thought was a really good episode. It was very tension buildy. I heard a few people say that there wasn't actually that much going on, but I don't know. I think mainly that last kind of 10 minutes or so was just so good. And yeah, all in all, I've only watched it once so far. I will watch through all the season again before I do my ranking of every episode. But yeah, I like the build up. The end was amazing, and this one, unfortunately, on the most part, let it down quite a lot. But we'll get into that. But let's get started with the cast. Ncuti Gatwa as the 15th Doctor. Ncuti is really good. He took a while to warm up for me, but I really like him now. I mean, I'm not going to say he's up there with one of my favorite Doctors at the moment, but he is climbing up the ladder, and he's definitely doing a good job. I consider him to be the Doctor now, especially these last two episodes have really kind of given him a lot more doctory stuff to do, and he just is really good in the role. I can't wait to see him in more episodes next season, and hopefully, for a third season at least as well. So yeah, really happy with him. Millie Gibson as Ruby Sunday. She's good here as well. I'm happy with her as a companion. Spoilers, I mean, there are always spoilers in these reviews, but I will just say right now, it's big spoilers, because Ruby leaves the TARDIS at the end of this episode, which I was very shocked about, because there was the talk of Millie Gibson leaving the show after season 1 and this new companion coming in, but then there was mention of, no, actually, she will be here in season 2, but now she's gone again, so I guess because we thought she was being replaced by the new companion, but then we saw the picture of Millie Gibson, Ncuti Gatwa, and Varada Santhu, or whatever her name is. I can't remember her name, the new companion for next season. We saw that picture of them all together and thought, oh, okay, maybe she is staying around for a bit of season 2 then. Now that I think about it, though, maybe that picture was taken when they were recording Boom. It could have been the case, maybe. I mean, they're not wearing anything like what they're wearing in Boom, but they might have gone out for an event or something, all together. So yeah, from what we can tell, I mean, the way it kind of ends, we will get to that later, but it sounds like we might see her again perhaps next season, but she has officially left the TARDIS at the end of this episode. So yeah, Millie Gibson's been great. I've really liked her as a companion, and she was good in this one as well. The only other character I'm going to mention here, an actor, is Mel, played by Bonnie Langford, because she was quite a big part of this story, actually, almost as much of a companion as Ruby was. She was really, really good here, had lots to do. When she started getting possessed and taken over by Sutekh, I really liked that stuff, really dark. Then, of course, her face changed because she was like fully taken over. She kind of turned into one of the Harbingers. I thought that was really cool, and Bonnie Langford put in a great performance. I'm so glad we've got to see Mel again. It's really boosted her up as a character compared to, when she was originally in the show, because let's be honest, she wasn't the most liked companion, but now I can say I really like this new version of Mel, and Bonnie Langford did a great job. Alright, so let's get on to some parts here. I feel like this might be a bit of a long one. So starting off with, Kate is killed, and then also Mrs. Flood, Carla, and Cherry are killed, and that ends up just being everybody is killed. Everybody's dead at the start of this episode. The sand starts coming through. Sutekh blows the sand. He's like, I bring Sutekh's sand of death, which I thought was a bit of a silly line. I like the I bring Sutekh's gift of death line, call back to Pyramids of Mars. Then they say sand of death, and he says it, and multiple people say it many times throughout this story, and I just thought it's getting old now. We've heard it once or twice, and now it sounds like almost everybody, and Sutekh said it like 2 or 3 times. And it's just like, can you just blow the sand? You don't have to say your line every time you do it. But anyway, I'm nitpicking a little bit. Everybody dies at the beginning of this story. Now, the first people we see die are Kate and pretty much all of Unit. And there was a point there where I was thinking, when we just saw them die, I was like, okay, maybe, and especially the way that Kate talked before she died, I thought this could be the end of Kate. This could, and I think would have worked as a good end to Kate's story. She's died. This has all gone wrong. There's some, there is something now to look back on for the Doctor. Some, collateral damage from this one. Some big collateral damage. Of course, that doesn't end up being the case, and we will get to that. But I thought that could have been really cool. Now, as soon as I saw Mrs. Flood, Carla, and Cherry die, then I was like, okay, maybe they're not going to stick with this, because I don't think they'd get rid of, especially since we still don't know what's going on with Mrs. Flood, I don't think they'd just kill her off there and then without explaining a bit more. And, with Carla as well, I don't think that's going to happen. But, maybe it could be the case. But then when I noticed that literally the whole world was covered in sand and everything was destroyed, and even later on we found out that whole universes and whole planets have been destroyed, then I was like, this is going to get reset. And we'll get onto that later. The memory TARDIS. This was pretty cool. Now, I haven't really seen Tales from the TARDIS. I've seen little bits here and there. I think I've actually seen all of the, where there's people in the memory TARDIS talking to each other, the old companions. I have actually seen all of them, so I've pretty much seen everything, apart from this new one. I think there is now a new one of Pyramids of Mars, which I have not seen yet. But, I liked that the memory TARDIS is actually a canon thing in the show now. That is a pretty cool thing. How it works with, the memory of a time machine and all this sort of stuff. It's a little convoluted, it's a little strange, but I don't mind it, and I do quite like the memory TARDIS. It is a cool thing. Of course, it's a very, weird thing, but this whole season's weird with the gods and with all that sort of stuff, so I can take that. Sutekh clung onto the TARDIS when he was sent into the time vortex. So if you don't know how Sutekh was defeated back in Pyramids of Mars, the Doctor basically sent him into the time vortex. And thought he killed him, but I guess he didn't. And it turns out that, he clung onto the TARDIS, and he's been clinging onto the TARDIS ever since Pyramids of Mars. Now, firstly, that scene where it shows, the little flashbacky scene where it shows Sutekh clinging to the TARDIS when it's spinning around through the time vortex looked absolutely ridiculous. It looked so stupid. I'm sorry, but I just kind of giggled a little bit. I was kind of like, okay, that's this is supposed to be like a really serious scene, but it just looks really silly. But the fact that he's been there ever since the Doctor left Pyramids of Mars, got in the TARDIS, went through the time vortex, Sutekh's clung on since that point, I think we're led to believe, and he's just been there the whole time. Every planet the Doctor's ever visited, he's gone there and caused havoc as well. So I think it was a little bit far-fetched. We've only been hearing, the TARDIS has only been making these strange noises as of recent times. Now, I guess his final phase of, his plan has only taken into effect recently, so maybe that's why the TARDIS noises have only just started happening. But I thought it was maybe a little far-fetched that he's been there the whole time. Everywhere the Doctor's been, the dust has killed everything, or the sand. That's what I basically mentioned before. Once again, I think this is a bit far-fetched, personally. Every single place the TARDIS has landed since Sutekh jumped on board, Sutekh, I guess, has blown sand on that planet just as the Doctor's left, and it's killed everybody on that planet. I don't really understand that. First of all, from what I understand, because there's all these things about, Earth, and it's only happening in specific times of Earth. So, you could go to, 2005, and Sutekh's, killed that off or whatever at this specific time. But I don't know. For me, it's just, once again, it's a bit far-fetched. The Doctor's been back, let's say, to Earth many times since Sutekh supposedly latched onto the TARDIS. Sometimes within months, within weeks of each other, when landing. But so you're saying that Sutekh has gone there and blown his sand around every time he's landed, but it's not come into effect. It doesn't make sense, right? I know they tried to make it seem like, just because he did it back in 2004 or whatever, we're now in 2024 and it's not happened yet. Well, that's because we haven't landed here yet. Okay, but at what point does it then catch up? Because if it doesn't catch up, then what? You know what I'm trying to say? It's really hard to explain, but it just doesn't make sense for me. The Doctor's been back 2 places within a short time frame multiple times, but we haven't seen everything destroyed. For me, the explanation that it gave of, oh well, it's only if you're back at that exact time, or whatever the explanation was, for me that doesn't work. That doesn't work. The people that have survived are losing memories. So we meet that woman on some planet somewhere. I don't think it was Earth. Oh, maybe it was Earth. I can't even remember, to be honest. By this point, I was a bit lost in the episode, if you can't already tell that from my review here. But yeah, he meets this woman on this planet. She's like the last woman here and the last person, I think, in general, in this little kind of tent thing. He comes and says hello, and he's like, oh, he needs some metal, apparently. And this whole scene, we'll mention the memories first. She, for some reason, is losing memories of things. I guess that's to do with, I guess the memory TARDIS has got something to do with that. And I don't know, because things from the past, times from the past, the Doctor and Sutekh have been and destroyed them. That's why the memories are getting destroyed. I think that's how that is playing out, but it's very confusing and convoluted. But basically, yeah, he goes here and he needs some metal because he needs to shove some metal into like that TARDIS thing into that screen on the memory TARDIS so that he can watch back Pyramids of Mars, because I guess he's bored and he wants to watch some good Doctor Who. Yeah, he needs some metal. The TARDIS is full of metal, and I'm sure the Doctor's got plenty of metal hanging around somewhere. But no, he needs to go to this random woman on this planet that's been completely destroyed, grab a spoon, and it seemed as like she brings out this spoon like it's the most holy thing of all time. I guess because there's not a lot of metal left, but it's supposed to be played, I think, quite seriously, but it just seems a bit ridiculous. He breaks it, he shoves it in this screen, and voila, he can now watch Pyramids of Mars with a spoon. Just that whole scene was, I just don't know. The first person Sutekh saw in 2004 was Ruby's mum. He wants to know who she is. What was this all about? So I guess when he gets to 2004, that is the point where is that the point where Sutekh's plan is starting to take place, or is it before that? Because we have the noises of the TARDIS back in Wild Blue Yonder. So at what point is this all happening? I know, I don't know. I really don't know. But yeah, basically Sutekh sees Ruby's mum, but doesn't get to see her face. He wants to know who she is for some reason. I don't know why. Why does Sutekh care? He's like adamant on, I need to know who this woman is. Why do you care? What is the point? Why? The Doctor takes Sutekh back through the vortex, which brings life back again. Yeah. Cool visual. Nice visual. I did quite like it, They, of course, had that like kind of tow hook rope thing that they hooked onto Sutekh and then hooked onto the TARDIS. I do find it a little bit ridiculous that while I think Ruby was the one that actually hooked it onto Sutekh, wasn't she? While she's hooking onto Sutekh, she's not doing it particularly quickly. Let's remember that he's this godlike being and he's like a giant dog, and surely he could just like, once she's there hooking it on, can he not just like bite her head off or something? But he just lets it happen. He's just kind of like, roaring and screaming, but just letting her hook that on and just letting the Doctor walk back to the TARDIS and hook it onto the TARDIS, and he just doesn't move. Can he not move? Was that explained? And then they take him back through the time vortex again, and as he's like flopping around behind the TARDIS, he's scraping the time vortex, and you can see like the real world behind the time vortex. I thought that whole scene was really, really cool. Don't really know how it works, but I thought it looked cool, so I'll give it that. And then in the end, the Doctor cuts the rope and lets Sutekh fly back into the time vortex, and he kind of sets fire and disappears, which is cool if that is not literally exactly how he defeated him last time. And we found out from this literal episode and last episode that he didn't die last time that he was shoved into the time vortex. So why have you gone, didn't kill him last time I put him in the time vortex? Maybe it'll work this time. What? Ruby's mum is just an ordinary woman, and she was pointing at the Ruby Road street sign. You can probably hear the tone in my voice here. Now, the fact that Ruby's mum is just a normal woman, I don't hate. I'm glad that she's not some super important woman. It's at the same time, I also don't like it because what was the point of all this build up? She's just a normal woman who just didn't want to be traced back to. And, you know, the fact that Sutekh was so adamant on figuring out who this woman was, and she's just a normal woman. And you had the whole thing of the Doctor going, she may have been an ordinary woman, but us thinking that she's something really special has made her something really special, and all this wheelie wanky crap, I don't even know. And then the fact that the very, you know, aggressive point, it turned out she was just pointing at a sign that said Ruby Road and naming her daughter, although there's nobody there to know that she was pointing at that sign and specifically going, that's going to be the name of my daughter. There's nobody else there. She points at the sign, she walks off. Nobody sees that happen. So what's the point? How does it make any sense? What the hell is going on? Ruby leaves the Doctor. Yep, we had that whole scene. I mean, it was a nice enough scene. It was, you know, now that I liked it now that she's found her mum and, you know, because that whole scene in the coffee shop, by the way, really, really emotional scene. Although I wasn't particularly happy with the revelation of who Ruby's mum was, I did like that scene. And yeah, when she decides to leave the Doctor because she's now got her mum here, she's got all these memories to go back through and all these new memories to make. And I think that's a very good reason to decide to leave the TARDIS. It was a bit unexpected, but at the same time, it makes sense. I liked it. I think by this point, though, I was just a bit annoyed by this episode that it didn't really fully get me, you know, into it that much. And finally, we still don't know who Mrs. Flood is. Of course, everybody ends up surviving in the end. Did I even mention that? I think I did, didn't I? When, going through the time vortex brings life back again. So everybody's alive. It's basically a reset, which is... It's a bit of a trope for RTD of just resetting everything. When everything goes to shit, we'll just reset it back to how it was. Nothing actually happened. I dislike it when that happens. This is possibly one of the worst versions of that. I just really disliked how they handled that. And yeah, Mrs. Flood comes back at the end. She all of a sudden she seems like she's now good. Because, you know, before, when she went in the last episode and spoke to Cherry, she seemed really sinister, and she seemed very sinister the whole time. She was like, there's a flood, you know, there's a flood, there's a storm coming, and she looked at the camera and she seemed really menacing. Whereas when she's back alive again, she's having a laugh with Cherry. They all seem very nice and happy, and Mrs. Flood seems like she's a nice woman again. And then at the end of the episode, she does another fourth wall break looking at the camera. And basically says this is not the end of his story. His story will end, the Doctor's story will end in terror. Bit of a tease for next episode, I guess. But yeah, still don't know what the hell's going on with Mrs. Flood. I'm guessing we're going to figure that out either in the Christmas special or maybe next season. But at the moment, still got no idea who she is. So there we go. That is Empire of Death. What a letdown. You know, I've written down a grade here out of 10. But the more that I've just gone through my notes and remembered, I think I've got to go even lower than what I've put. And even that might be a bit high. So, a rating out of 10 for Empire of Death. I'm going to go for a 6 out of 10. Being a finale, there was a lot going on, was there? It's really difficult, this, because I liked The Legend of Ruby Sunday so much. The build-up was so good. The episode in general I thought was just really good. Sutekh, Susan, all that sort of stuff, really exciting. This episode started off relatively interesting with everybody dying from the sand, but then it got to a point where I was like, well, they're just going to survive, and then it just kind of became a bit of a walking around and figuring stuff out. There was a few nice little moments here in the memory TARDIS with Mel and all that sort of stuff. But then once we got to the resolutions of everything, Sutekh I don't think was used enough. The way they killed him off was not satisfactory and was pretty much the same way they killed him off last time. And obviously we now know that didn't work, so what's going on there? The revelation of Ruby's mum was very, very underwhelming, and ultimately this episode is possibly the biggest letdown of a finale, like from part 1 to part 2, of all time, to be honest. I think this is the worst part 1 to part 2, comparison. The only one that I'd say maybe is worse, if you even count it as a part 1 and part 2, which I don't, is Heaven Sent and Hellbent. Every other finale that is a 2-part finale, I think, has done a better job than this. So, yeah, a 6 out of 10, that might even be generous, to be honest. I don't know. I'm going to have to see how I feel about it when I rewatch all these episodes again, but that's my rating for now. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.